Okay, thank you very much. Okay, now let's commence the Nestrans Board meeting of 14th February. Do we have any declarations of interest? Oh, okay, I see Colin first, please.
Yeah, I'd just like to declare I'm a board member of Scottish Cycling, so won't take that the bit about the active travel. I'll step out for that. I think that'd be appropriate.
Councillor Ian.
Thanks. I'm a member of Cycling UK. Having considered the objective test, I don't believe it's necessary to withdraw, so I'll be remaining when issues touching on cycling are discussed.
Okay, thank you. Right, move on to a minute of the previous board meeting at 6th of December 2023. Are we content that that is an accurate, fair representation of what happened? If not, let me put your hand up, let me know. Okay, I see no hands, so minutes accepted. And with that, we move on. There is no presentation. We've had our workshop instead. With that, we'll move on to budget matters, and it's item, first of all, it's 3.1, but if I could ask Jenny Anderson to present, please.
Chair, and good afternoon, everyone. This report is to provide the board with an update on the monitoring and forecast outturn position for the current financial year and to consider any issues that may arise. Appendix 1 sets out a summary statement of income and expenditure to the end of December, and this shows spend to date at just over 2.8 million. Appendix 2 contains proposals for a couple of environments that are presented for consideration, and Appendix 3 then sets out the projects where a continuation of funding from this financial year to next is requested, along with a short comment as to the particular reason for the request for each project. An update on the balance held for the Strategic Transport Fund is also given, and the board is being asked to note the monitoring position and forecast presented in Appendix 1, to approve the environments set out in Appendix 2, to approve the continuation of fund into next financial year to complete approved projects that's presented in Appendix 3, and to note the Strategic Transport Fund position. And I'm happy to try and answer any questions in the report.
Do we have any questions or comments? Okay, with that, I see no hands, so I take it then we'll move on. We're happy to accept the recommendations. Yeah, okay, fine, that's good. So we'll move on to item 3.2 and back to you, Jenny, please.
Thanks again. This report asks the board to approve budgets for next financial year, but subject, however, to the anticipated funding levels being confirmed. The budget proposals have been prepared on the basis that funding levels from both councils and Scottish Government will be retained at current levels, but they may require further amendment by the board when the actual allocations are confirmed once the councils have set their budgets and once an offer of grant has been received from the Scottish Government. The report also references the changes to allocation methods for active travel funding by the Scottish Government and notes that although an RTP active travel grant will not be offered in 24-25, that proposals have been submitted for Nestrans to administer active travel behaviour change funding. Given the uncertainties regarding possible changes to funding mechanisms, only proposals for next financial year have been prepared at this time, but proposals for a 5-year programme of works will be developed and reported to future meeting. Nestrans has worked with officers from both councils to develop the budget proposals, and the proposed coordination and project development budget is presented in Appendix 1. The core costs reflect the estimated running costs in Nestrans, and although the Transport Executive Travel Planning post is currently vacant and the Transport Executive Strategy post will soon become vacant, both have been costed on the basis of being filled, with the latter also returning to being a full-time post. The previously approved 3-year programme of works was taken as the start point when preparing the Strategic Investment Programme for 23-24 that is presented in Appendix 2. The pink and blue shading used within the appendix represents the local authority delivering each project, with pink denoting those delivered by Aberdeen City Council and blue denoting Aberdeenshire Council projects, although there are also a couple you'll notice that are in green that reflect ongoing commissions that are being led by Nestrans. The proposed budget anticipates council allocations will be retained at this year's levels to give funding next year at £2,172,000. It also shows the funding from the current financial year that was requested in the previous budget report for continuation. Should this all be agreed, it would bring the total available next financial year to just under £3.7 million. The board has been asked to approve the 24-25 budgets with programmes as detailed in appendices 1 and 2, subject to the anticipated funding levels being confirmed and making any appropriate adjustments following the board's consideration. Note the potential for additional funding for active travel behaviour change to be awarded to Nestrans in association with the changes as a result of the Scottish Government's Active Travel Transformation Programme, and instruct that a longer-term general 5-year programme of works be developed and reported to future board as a medium-term financial strategy and basis for future years' annual budgets. Thanks, and I'm happy to try and answer any questions.
Do we have any questions? Okay, it's good. So with that, were we all content with the recommendations as set out on page 23? Yeah, I take it silences. We're happy. Thank you very much, Jenny. Okay, we will move on to item 4.1, the director's report, and with that, I'll ask Rob, please.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, Board. Item 4.1 is the Director's Report, which gives an update on a number of meetings and liaison which has gone on since the last meeting. As we've heard, it's been quite a busy time because of the changes in the way that the active travel behaviour change funding is to be allocated. But nevertheless, there's been a full work programme of ongoing meetings as well. There's a couple I'd like to bring to members' attention, if I may. On page 30, to note that I did a presentation to Aberdeenshire's Council on the 18th of January, just trying to ensure that all members of the Council were aware of the work of this board and the work of Nestrans. And it was well attended, although mostly online due to the inclement weather. And I think I had about an hour's worth of questions, which I think I managed to answer most of them, and escaped unscathed. So yeah, I did say to the Provost that I was happy to do that again. And I guess if Aberdeen City ever wanted an update on the work of Nestrans, I would obviously be prepared to do that as well. The other one I wanted to mention was that the Bus Alliance Board met on the 14th of December, and at Appendix 1 there is a minute of the Bus Alliance Board meeting. From that, the more eagle-eyed amongst you will have noticed that under item 2, that Kirsty has been successful in her application to the post of Bus Partnership Fund Manager, which will be at the City Council. So she will be leaving Nestrans, but I think it's a post and a role that will very much be taking forward the work of the Aberdeen Rapid Transit, the multimodal corridor studies, and I'm hoping that Kirsty will come back and still do the presentations to us on these items. So I think we're not losing her, but she's moving on to bigger and brighter things. So good luck, Kirsty. And under item 3, I wanted to mention that the Bus Alliance have an ongoing campaign. I think in response to some of the negativity around bus priorities, but the Alliance has commissioned Big Partnership to try and do some work around talking up the city centre, talking up public transport, and getting to the bottom of some of the, if I can call it, misinformation about footfall about the economics of the city and what we're trying to do to improve vitality rather than in any way damage it. So I wanted to bring these two items to the board's attention. And again, happy to answer any questions or take any comments from members. Thank you.
I'll just reiterate, I think the presentation that Rab gave us early, last month, now it was actually really good for the members that who don't see much of Nestrans and really don't see much of what we all do in travel, and what it was actually really good. And I would correct Rab, he answered all the questions. Certainly by my recollection, he answered all the questions. In fact, we probably could have kept going for a bit longer, in all honesty. So I'll thank Rab for coming in and giving that presentation. It was very informative in what Nestrans does. And I'm going to see Isabel, please.
Yeah, thanks. And also the passenger transport working group, it was really useful to have you there too. So that was good. One thing that's come up in various parts of Aberdeenshire recently is access by bus for young people going to college. The buses don't seem to suit them at all, and it seems to be becoming more and more apparent. Certainly in the Inverurie corridor, they tend to take the train rather than the bus because it gets them there on time, but that's not available across Aberdeenshire. So maybe that's something that could be looked at, but I guess it's all about paying passengers as well, and they're probably tailoring their bus travel to the people that are more likely to be paying for their fares rather than those with free fares. But I think the other thing that the Bus Alliance needs to consider is that the bus timetables change every 6 months, and that's really hard for regular users to manage. And some people have to change their jobs or leave their jobs because of the twice yearly changes of bus timetables. And I'm not sure how much that gets considered. And it's not something that comes up at the forums that we have either. But whenever the bus times change, I certainly get complaints.
Yeah, thanks for that. If I could come back on a couple of these points. The first one about bus operators, they do get reimbursed. So although young people are travelling free to them, there is still an income coming to bus companies through that. The second thing to say, particularly in terms of colleges, that the operators have been quite keen to discuss with colleges. I know, for example, that when the college in Fraserburgh moved to a new campus, Stagecoach went and spoke to them about timing and about routing to make sure that they were maximising the opportunity for young people who wanted to use the bus. The last one, in terms of change of timetables, through the Bus Alliance and through the previous quality partnership, there is an agreement that they will only change timetables on a limited number of occasions, I think twice per year. So previously they could change them just by notifying the local authority. So there's a little bit of give and take there. They do try, but at the end of the day, yes, they need to be commercial or be subsidised and supported. But it's in their interest to get more people on buses, and therefore it's in their interest to make them where people want to go.
Happy enough, Isabel?
Yes, thanks. And I know at the online bus forum that we had recently, they did speak about working with some factories and things to make sure that the staff got to work on time as well. And I think that's really good. And the more of that happens, the better.
Miranda.
Thank you. Just a couple of comments. I've just had a very whispered conversation with my convener of transport over here, and we'd be very keen to see the you come to present to council. Sorry to put that on you, but we'd be really keen to have you come and present and answer some of the questions that the city councillors have as well. I think that'd be really beneficial. the only other comment I would have is I've seen your Bus Alliance campaign on YouTube. It has plagued my YouTube over the past few weeks now, but it's a really positive video, and it's really good to get the positive message around the bus priority measures out there. We have obviously just had Spectra, and there's some good news in the footfall over the Christmas period as well. So I'm hopeful that as we continue to sort of plug away at the positive narrative around bus priority measures, that we can start to change the perception of the bus priority measures, because the reality is Aberdeen is still open for business. We still have access to all the car park, access to most of the main routes through the city, and actually we just need to make sure that we're continually plugging away at that positive message. So I do welcome that campaign coming forward, and it was really good to see. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Isabel, is that a legacy hand, if I may? Okay, see no more comments, questions, etc. Note the recommendation and also note the request as well of Rab. With that, we'll move on to item 4.2, and Rab's going to introduce that as well, develop to deliver.
Thank you, Chair. Develop to Deliver was originally pulled together by the 7 regional transport partnerships, I think in 2015, almost as a manifesto or a campaign document to say what the regional transport partnerships could do and were offering. It was felt that there was a need for that to be refreshed and updated, and the 7 regional transport partnership chairs meet on a regular basis, and they approved a document on 28th of November at their Glasgow meeting, looking at 10 topics, which cover almost all aspects of transport, and an offering really that we would like to be seen as an opportunity to provide that bridge or that conduit between local authorities and the national organisations, including Transport Scotland. So it's an offer, really. We would like to put it to COSLA, to Scots, the Society of Transport Officers, and to Transport Scotland, saying that we would like to be more involved in the transport debate and facilitate any sort of communication and delivery as much as we can. It covers, as I say, all 10 topics, hopefully pretty much everything that we could think about focusing on. It's high level, it's strategic, but it is an offer that's out there and will go to ministers if it's signed off by the 7 partnerships. I think the changes that we've spoken about earlier today in terms of the role of regional transport partnerships in helping to deliver real change in active travel is an example of the type of work that we were saying we would like to take on board. And I think it's the first example of them, Transport Scotland, saying, yep, okay, let's see how we can change things and do it more directly. The report is there for information. The recommendations ask you to note that, but to endorse the principles. So collaboration, opportunities for regional coordination, and the role of regional partnerships in enabling liaison between national and local authorities. Again, happy to answer questions. Councillor Turner, as chair, was at the chair's meeting in Glasgow. I don't know if you want to add anything to that, Chair.
Oh, yeah, let's see if I can break this cup. Yes, I was there in Glasgow, where we met the Transport Minister as well. And we went through the document. We had quite an extensive discussion. Mr. Hall was actually online assisting, not just myself, but just some of the other transport chairs, just as we talked through. It was quite a number of the items that's on here. Yes, they're very important to Nestrans, but they were actually shared by the other regional transport partnerships as well. And I think we delivered a good joined up presentation to the Transport Minister. Certainly we asked questions in terms of what could we do more to help. What could they actually put out and focus through using the regional transport partnerships, etc. So I would agree with what Rab's saying. Yes, on the active travel, it's certainly an interesting development, but we also focused on things like, I'm just reading it here through my note, delivering for the freight sector. That was seen as very important as well, particularly just getting up to Aberdeen and going further. So it's there for yourselves for, I wanted this in, I actually really wanted it in the last board meeting, but we weren't able to get it in time, just for other reasons. So it's here today. And as Rab's quite rightly said, it's so the transport partnerships can go collectively wider to cause, etc. I guess I put it open to the floor. Any comments, etc. Okay. Okay. With that, okay, noted. And we will move on. Well, accept the recommendations as there, which is to note and to endorse. We will move on to the next item in the agenda, which is, I'll just read it out. Sorry, I've got active travel delivery, and it's Mr. Finch Paul. It's taking the lead.
Thank you very much, Chair. The paper before you provides a summary of some of the key aspects that we were discussing in the workshop just beforehand. We're talking about the general background of the significant changes in active travel interventions and how they're going to be changed from April 2024, and how that funding mechanism is going to change going forward. The paper before you summarises some of those changes around, and it also confirms that we've had support from AECOM in order to assist us in that proposal going forward. And there's also just a reflection here that as we go through the submission, there will be ongoing changes. Probably as we get more information from Transport Scotland. We've provided we believe, a comprehensive submission to Transport Scotland. We hope to get speedy feedback and that opportunity to move to the next stage of that delivery going forward. There are 5 recommendations to note: the proposal to directly fund regional transport partnerships, homologates the appointment of AECOM to provide that short-term support to Nestrans, and confirmation that Transport Scotland are happy to fund that. Which is the 3rd recommendation, which has now been superseded, agrees the principles of the submission to Transport Scotland as discussed at the workshop, and seeks a further report back to a future board meeting once the funding is confirmed by Transport Scotland. Thank you, Chair.
And I will open it to the floor. And I see no one online either. Okay. So are we content to accept the recommendations with the amend? Oh, sorry, John, Councillor Cox.
Yeah, sorry for the delay. I just want to reiterate the point I made earlier on that appreciate the work that the officers are doing in terms of the active travel bridge and BAF. It's been on the agenda for a long time, and again, appreciate that. And as long as we get regular updates, that would be great. Thank you very much.
Thank you, John.
I think that's something we can do for Nestrans, and I suspect that also that's something that Martin can support us with through the Infrastructure Services Committee process.
Yeah, agreed. Okay, we'll come back to, we're content with the recommendations, albeit with the change to item 3. Yes, I see no disagreement. Okay, so, okay, yes, I was away to say we need to let Colin come back in, take a little. Okay. All right, with that, we'll move on to item 5.1. It's the Aberdeen Lawrence Cork multimodal corridor update. And again, it is Mr. Finch that's presenting.
Thank you very much, Chair. Board members will recall we last updated you in April 2023 on the progression of this corridor study. The history of this study goes back quite a long time to August 2019 when we were awarded local rail development funding for this piece of work. We then got stuffed up with the COVID pandemic and a rather laborious gateway review process, it has to be said, with Transport Scotland. Since April 2023, however, we were able to clear a lot of those barriers to the work, and we've been able to push on collectively with our partners in the local authorities and AECOM, and we've managed to finalise the scope for the remainder of the appraisal process, conclude outstanding discussions on transport planning objectives, successfully complete or get funding not from LRDF, which was wound down, but from the bus partnership funding. And we've also then been able to move to complete a preliminary options appraisal report. The work on this study fits into a wider framework of studies and policy development within the study area across all modes, as well as also overlapping with the work on the other corridors supported by the Bus Partnership Fund. So moving to the proposals, first of all, we have published an addendum to the case for change, just so there's that collation of all the points previously made about the bus partnership funding, so that it is all in one place, and that makes it easier for elements of this corridor as we go forward to fit in with the ART proposals going on. Secondly, a draft preliminary options appraisal report has also been completed, looking at the changes and the updates recently, assessing a range of different measures and packages going forward. The executive summary appended to the report highlights that, but I think the key outcomes of that is that we wish to be taking forward a strategic active travel network package, which focuses on making sure we have that key linkage along the corridor with high quality active travel routes. We have a package around bus priority measures. We think it's valuable in continuing to consider the creation of new rail stations, both at Newton Hill and at Cove, along with supporting measures to make them effective. And a mobility hub package as well, sort of bus interchange with bus priority measures. The work concluded that trying to improving existing interchanges wouldn't necessarily provide the strategic change that we're looking for, although there were elements which were proposed as that package which should be incorporated into those other packages going forward. The next steps are, in line with STAG, is to move to a detailed appraisal of the shortlisted packages. And that work has commenced already on those elements, and we're doing some more research around why people are choosing rail or bus in these local communities. Further working up what the detail of these proposals would look like, so that we have accurate costings and an accurate assessment of what the impact would be. This will be progressed because there is available funding in the current financial year, although some elements of modelling will probably fall into the next financial year because we're awaiting the outcome of some ART routing tests, which are currently underway. That will then be followed by public and stakeholder consultation, and then final reporting. It is recommended that the board note the recent progress on the study, approve the key outcomes of the preliminary options appraisal report, and then approve the publication of the preliminary options appraisal report and appendices on the Nestrans website. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Do we have any questions or comments on this report? Yeah. Ian Ross, please.
Hi, thank you, Chair. Hope you can hear me okay.
Yes, we can hear you fine.
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you. It's probably quite early on, but it's just a question about the good news about the rail stations being taken forward further. But I just wonder at what point will the practicality of actually being able to locate these stations on the ground be looked at, please?
Thank you very much, Ian. That really comes to the next stage of the detailed appraisal, what we're entering into, because we have done a high level assessment to think it is worth looking at it further. We think that there's a policy rationale and there's a potential effectiveness. We've done some initial work with rail planning colleagues to assess the feasibility of placing them. And the work ongoing would say, well, what would this actually look like in terms of practicalities, the space available, the parking and the access routes? I guess that's the more detailed consideration, which we'll be looking at the detailed appraisal stage in terms of working that one out. So at the moment, we've done a high level qualitative assessment. Yep, no, is this worth taking forward? And then the next stage is that more detailed quantitative assessment, where perhaps we've got some initial sketches or designs. Well, perhaps designs is too hard, definitely sketches of outline designs and say, well, what would this look like and what do people feel about it? So I guess that's the next stage, Ian, if that helps.
Yes, that's great, Paul. Thanks. That's very much what I had in mind. As you know, as I'm sure everyone else will appreciate as well, particularly where you're perhaps trying to reinstall a station at Newton Hill when there was a station there at one time, there could well be some difficult constraints about actually physically locating these things. So it's good to hear that it's all in hand. Thanks very much.
Okay, I see no one else indicating, and with that, I take it we're happy to accept the recommendations set out in the paper. Yes, okay. We will move on to item 5.2, which is the Aberdeen City Region Deal Strategic Transport Appraisal Update. And it's Mr. Finch again, please.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. Last Friday, I presented a update report to the City Region Deal Joint Committee. The elements within that report are also relevant for the consideration of the Nestrans Board. So I wanted to take some of the key elements of that paper to this board, so that there was that ability to make sure that both governance was updated. Although there are some members who have the benefit of sitting on both boards. In the paper, I highlight the background to the work of the City Region Deal, in particular, the 7 million Strategic Transport Appraisal Fund that we are working through, which provides the opportunity to fund business case and feasibility work, such that if future regional funding arrangements came place, we had a set of schemes that we could take forward. In my report to the Joint Committee, I provided updates on the programme of work that we're undertaking at the moment, and that includes the completion of the ASAM 19 model, progression of work we're doing on the A90, A952 corridor, and the fact that work at the moment is also being undertaken in parallel with work funded by the Just Transition Fund, led by Campaign for North East Rail and Grampian Chamber of Commerce. And I also refer to a recent workshop that we had, a public exhibition we had up in Peterhead, which was successfully executed with a good range of issues coming across there. We note progress made on work around A956 Wellington Road, particularly in the section between Craigshaw Drive and Charleston Road North and Suter Head roundabout, considering how improved active travel links could be implemented in that area and how that links into the ETZ proposals and the Aberdeen South Harbour Link Road. Previously, I've reported on the rail freight demand and option study. And then there were two other studies around transport mobility hubs and regional hydrogen refueling facility. And although work has progressed on the strategic business cases for both of those, they are the outcomes of that point to a reduced scope of work compared to earlier expectations. The report I presented to the Joint Committee on the 9th of February set out some future funding options for the remaining 3 years of the Strategic Transport Appraisal deal, taking advantage of funding freed up from reduced scope of the transport mobility hubs and the hydrogen refueling facility. The Joint Committee, the Joint City Region Deal Committee, approved additional allocations for the Wellington Road work and the A90 A952 work to progress beyond appraisal and to provide funding allocations for further design work. We also were able to identify specific funding for future work on the bus priority fund, because so we can safeguard the progress that has already been made on Aberdeen Rapid Transit. The Joint Committee also approved, subject to change control process, an allocation to cover off the risk of potential future cost increases or inflationary pressures to ensure the completion of the external link to Aberdeen South Harbour Road. So the recommendations for this board, apart from the update, is just to note the progress being made on the transport elements of the Aberdeen City Region Deal Strategic Transport Appraisal. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Any questions, comments? No, okay. Thank you for that, Mr. Finch. Okay, we will move on to item 6.1. Bus Passenger Satisfaction Survey 2023. And the officer is Kirsty Chalmers. Please.
Thank you very much. This report provides members with a summary of the results of the recently completed Bus Passenger Satisfaction Survey. This survey marks a reinstatement of a survey that was undertaken on an annual basis by Transport Focus, and before that Nestrans, pre-COVID. And the results of this really mark the first survey of bus passenger satisfaction since 2019. So the results therefore provide us with a new post-COVID baseline, which will feed into the work of the Bus Alliance, in particular providing the baseline for the development of the Bus Service Improvement Partnership Agreement, and to inform the development and implementation of the Bus Action Plan. The work was undertaken by consultants ACOM, with surveys carried out in November last year across both Aberdeen City and Aberdeenshire. Just over 1,000 bus users were asked about their satisfaction, with a really wide range of factors covering the whole journey experience, from service provision, information, infrastructure, all relating to a journey that they had just completed. Headline figures from the survey are provided in the report. A link to the full survey report is also available within the board report. In summary, 81% of bus users are satisfied overall with their bus journey. This is a slight overall reduction in satisfaction compared to 2019, which was 86%, but still quite a substantial proportion. Satisfaction with value for money and journey time have remained broadly consistent with 2019 levels, but there has been a reduction in satisfaction relating to punctuality. As I say, the surveys are undertaken of bus users, asking their overall satisfaction with the journey that they've just completed. As I say, the full results are available in the report that's linked within the document, and the recommendation really is just to note the results of the survey, which will then be published on the Nestrans website. Happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Do we have any questions or comments from the board? Oh, so Maggie, sorry, please.
It's okay. It seems slightly odd that 81% are satisfied overall, but actually the other measures are much lower. Presumably that's because it's people that are travelling free are satisfied with their journey. So it's kind of slightly, I was going to say misleading. It's not really misleading, but you have to put that interpretation on it. Is that correct?
Yes, I think that there is a sort of, it is people's perceptions after all, and sometimes there are inconsistencies within that data. When we ask the question about value for money, we're only asking that question of the people who have paid for their journey. So anyone who's on a concessionary pass is excluded from that question. But yes, it's perceptions at the end of the day. So sometimes there's an inconsistency between their overall satisfaction and then when you ask specifically. But there's also interesting comparisons between Aberdeen City and Aberdeenshire that are all within the report as well.
I guess I was thinking that if you ask the people that paid for their buses what their overall bus satisfaction level was, you might get a different answer than if you bundle them up together with the people who aren't paying.
Yes, possibly. But we have access to all of the data as well, so it's possibly something we can look at a bit more closely.
Okay, Maggie. Yeah. Okay. Councillor Reid, Glenn, please.
Yeah, thanks, Chair, and thanks for this. Mostly it's okay kind of thing, but the punctuality you touched on, 65%, it's really quite poor. There's other regions that are much higher, the comparators. So I know we're here to note it, etc., and the results are there for everybody, but surely we should be asking, okay, what are we actually going to do about this? What are other regions doing differently that we're not doing, that they're achieving a much better actual percentage than we are? I mean, 65% across the two is really quite low. Something that gets flagged up to me a few times by basically bus passengers, constituents, etc., is that the real-time boards that we see are often, it says a bus is coming along and it just doesn't show. The app is accurate, but the real-time information boards are not. And when it's been flagged up with Stagecoach before, they say they don't manage that. They say the local authority manages that. So I'm curious about that. But also, I don't think we should just be noting this. We should be asking what will be done to improve this.
Yes, thank you. I should, I suppose, put this in the context of the wider Bus Alliance Quality Partnership, which has as its sort of key aims really to improve punctuality and reliability and reduce journey times as their sort of key priorities. And then that's fed into the work that's ongoing in terms of the multimodal corridor studies and Aberdeen Rapid Transit, all very much, and the bus priority that's come out of those, all very much aimed at improving punctuality and improving reliability and reducing journey times. Obviously, it takes a little bit. The bus priority has gone in the city centre. It will take some time for that to influence people's perceptions, but also for those bus timetables to change to reflect the savings that are being seen. But it's very much, I think, a top priority for the Bus Alliance is improving punctuality and reducing journey times. So I think, yes, there's been a substantial drop in people's perceptions of or their satisfaction with punctuality, and it is absolutely something that the Bus Alliance, I think, needs to take forward. I think the corridor studies and the resulting bus priority that's being identified through those will be the mechanism for doing that. In terms of the real-time information, I may pass that to Martin, if that's all right.
Yeah, I'd like to bring Martin in as well. Thank you.
Grant, I'm going to have a go at this. At a general level, I understand how the real-time system works because I was quite involved in implementing my previous role. So it's actually a lot more complicated than saying it's a local authority issue or it's an operator issue or it's a supplier issue. So our supplier takes a data feed from Stagecoach, and as long as the information on that is accurate, then it goes to the next stage, which is then the predictions are calculated based on an algorithm and then put onto the boards. So there's a lot of stages where that could fall apart, where the bus is tracking and being received, and therefore that's the kit that's on the Stagecoach bus, which is the responsibility of Stagecoach. There's the feed itself, which a Stagecoach supplier provides to one of our suppliers. And then there's the sort of software itself, which does takes that information and puts it on the boards. So it's actually a good example of good partnership working. When it goes wrong, it's not so easy to say it's one person's fault. So I guess that's something we can pick up with our suppliers and with Stagecoach.
Thanks, Martin. If I could come back, if you don't mind, yeah, if we could pick it up, because I've heard it from quite a few different people, and what they're saying is the app is dead on. So Stagecoach are obviously feeding. I'm using Stagecoach for this example, but Stagecoach are obviously making sure their app is up to date, etc. Why we are our supplier is not receiving the data feed that they're receiving, that's a concern. Because some people will use the app more likely it's younger people, etc. But your more elderly person is probably not going along with an app, and they're looking at the board that's in front of them, and they're not getting the same level of service, and that may affect, as they'd said before, the perception of punctuality, etc.
Yeah, I can come back on that. I mean, again, at a very general level, councillor, each sign is also subject to being in its own environment, so whether it receives data at the same level as everywhere else. But again, at a higher level, I know colleagues in the passenger transport unit are looking at the sort of next generation or an update to the system on that. So it's something that the team are constantly working on, trying to make sure that improvements are there, trying to keep up with the most recent advances in technology on that. But again, I think we could probably look at getting a more detailed update rather than my general discussion here, if that helps.
Yeah, thanks. It would, Martin. One final question, if you don't mind. Why is it that our supplier updates all this when you think surely Stagecoach or the operator should be doing all that?
I'm not sure I understand the question. So the local authority is responsible for bus stop information. So we provide the sign. So that's our signage. Without us intervening, Stagecoach wouldn't have signs on the road on the roadside. I'm not sure I've got that question. So, councillor, if that's wrong.
Don't worry, Martin. It's okay. I know. I do. I understand that obviously we maintain infrastructure and all that kind of stuff, but it does seem that it would be much more accurate if we just if Stagecoach had direct access to updating this rather than when they make a change. And sometimes I would imagine there's not a lot of time. Say like I don't know, there's a driver illness or whatever, but a bus is not going to run. If Stagecoach could actually update it themselves, I don't know. It's just going forward. If you'd be removing a layer of administration into getting the accurate information to the actual consumers.
Just wondering if we're going a little bit off topic here, to be completely honest. I think I get where you're coming from, Councillor Reid, but I think we're going off topic from what is the survey and the response, and we maybe take up your comments separately, to be honest, if that's okay with you. We'll look at within Aberdeenshire Council. If that's okay.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Councillor Davidson, Isabel, please.
It wasn't hugely different. It is the so what. So we've got this information. So what? And while I appreciate the Aberdeen Rapid Transport Initiative is great, it's not solving problems in the Shire. And if I look at Newborough, the early morning bus is missed every day this week. So how does that get resolved? And I'm sure it's issues. They struggle with drivers. They struggle with condition of buses, all sorts of things. But if the more unreliable buses are, the less people will use them. So, it's a significant issue. And people in the Shire are travelling further on the whole. And they're not, the ones that rely on buses really rely on buses. And they're not as often as the city ones either. So we really need to work on having regular, reliable services that serve our people well.
Yeah, just in response, I suppose the survey has been done as part of the Bus Alliance, so the bus operators have been involved in and have got the results of that survey. To say we've just received that final report, so it will now, I think, be up to the Bus Alliance executive group to discuss those findings, to use them to inform the development and the delivery of the bus action plan. And as I say, it very much informs a baseline on which hopefully we can improve. But yes, I think those discussions now need to happen within the Bus Alliance, with the bus operators, with the two councils. What can we do to, can we look at that data in a bit more detail, and what can we do to, through that to improve it?
Please.
Thanks, Chair. If I can add to that, I was keen that Kirsty didn't present the whole 129-page report as an appendix, but it is available on the website and there's a link there. But in particular, just to say that there is more detailed breakdown. So there's a breakdown, I think, by operator, and there's a breakdown by key corridors. So you could have a look at only the A96, the Inverurie corridor, if you wanted, and compare it. Oh, I'm being told no.
You can break it down by Aberdeen City and Aberdeenshire.
What?
Unfortunately, the sample size means that once you break it, although we've sampled every individual corridor, once you get down to the small numbers, it probably is. It's not a big enough sample, but you can break it down by Aberdeen City and by Aberdeenshire. And actually, the differences between the two is often there are some interesting comparisons within that.
Thanks, Kirsty. The other thing I was going to say was the so what question. I don't take flippant. I think it's absolutely right. Although the recommendation is to note that really the action is to note and think, how can we improve? So absolutely, that's the purpose of the survey. What can we do to be better? And the intent is that we'll do future surveys and bring them back. Chair was asking, will we be doing it annually? Not necessarily, I think, but we will be doing future reports looking at the same questions in the future.
Thank you, Rob. I just want to double check, Isabel, did you want to come back, or is that legacy your hand? If when you're in the room, you don't need to do that. Just let me know. Just try to confuse. We'll just try and confuse everybody. That's that's what we managed. So with that, I think we move to accept the recommendation as it is laid out there. Okay, I see that, and I'll take this point in time to thank Kirsty on behalf of the board for your work, and we wish you the success in the future, what you go on to do. Okay, our next item, just go back to my papers, is the progress report, item 7. I guess, do we have any questions on what is being presented there? Comments? No. Last chance. Okay. With that, we'll move on to item 8, which is publications and consultations, and I'll ask Rob to talk us through that, please.
Thank you, Chair. A number of publications, I think there are 9 publications that we've pulled together. 8 of them are really just for noting, for members' information. But the one that we wanted to draw your attention to and ask for endorsement is the City Local Transport Strategy Response. It's included as Appendix 1. It has been discussed with officers of the City Council, and I think it's worth saying that officers of Nestrans have been involved in preparing the local transport strategies at both Aberdeen City and Aberdeenshire. Has been a close collaboration. But the draft comments have been shared and welcomed by City Council officers. So the report is there. I won't go through all the comments. They're mostly about welcoming, but offering suggestions as to how things could be better aligned to the regional transport strategy. So the board's asked to approve the submission of Appendix as a response to the Council's local transport strategy.
Thank you, Rob. Do we have any questions or comments on this item? Okay, no, okay, it's good. So I take it we'll move to accept the recommendations as what Rob has set out. Again, see no dissenting hands. Okay, that's fine. So we will move on to item 9, which is information bulletins, and that is also Rob, please.
Yes, Chair, a number of items for noting, not really requiring a decision, but for members' information. The Get About programme goes on. There will be complications around how Get About goes forward, in that it was very much about behaviour change. Now that there is funding separately for active travel behaviour change, there will be a need, I think, to continue with other elements of Get About, but we think that it might be possible to report these through the same governance that we spoke about for the active travel element as well, but making sure that there's no overlap, but that there is recognition between the active travel behaviour change and behaviour change around other aspects such as public transport, car sharing, electric vehicles, etc., which are also currently covered by Getabout. The Nestrans annual report for 22-23 and the business plan for 23-24 were approved by the board in September and have now been published on the Nestrans website. There is a link contained within the report. South College Street, a consultation is currently ongoing on phase 2 improvements for the South College Street area. Particularly 4 options are being looked at for the junction with Queen Elizabeth Bridge. Encourage people to look at the City Council citizen space if they want to look at or comment on the options that are being discussed. The consultation is open until the 16th of February, so Friday of this week. There is an update there on Aberdeen Rapid Transit. I think particularly the decision of the Scottish Government on 19th of December when they produced their budget for the coming year. And I think it was a surprise to all of us that there was no line for bus partnership fund going forward. We've had a look and we've spoken to officers, civil servants at Transport Scotland around the implications of that. It's being described as a pause rather than a move away from supporting bus partnership, but it means that there's no funding going to come from that budget line in 24-25. The report that Paul spoke to the City Region Deal Joint Committee about does provide an opportunity for some funding from the Strategic Transport Appraisal to be redirected into supporting Aberdeen Rapid Transit and the multimodal corridors at least over the coming year. So we think we've got a way around that potential difficulty. I also wanted to mention in particular that a workshop has been arranged for all members of both Aberdeen City and Aberdeenshire Councils on Friday the 8th of March. It will cover active travel for the first hour and then Aberdeen Rapid Transit for the second hour, in particular starting to look at some of the elements such as routing and the options that might be the important next step now that we've got the Assam model available, but we can start thinking about where ART might actually go and start to put some flesh on the bones towards what it might look like. We also have an update. Aberdeenshire Council are progressing with their local transport strategy, and also a rural transport strategy is being looked at through funding from one of the rural community-led funds. Finally, there is an update. It was asked, I think, at the last meeting about the non-motorised user funding that was being used, which has come from the budget for the Aberdeen Western Peripheral route. Thank you to officers at Aberdeen City Council who've helpfully pulled together a list of some of the core paths and strategic cycle routes that are being brought forward with funding from that AWPR NMU. I apologise for all the acronyms, but the non-motorised users funding that came about on the back of the bypass. So hopefully that satisfies members' questions from the last time, and happy to take any questions, although I may refer to colleagues if they're not really within my direct area, but thank you.
Good afternoon, Sandra. Please.
Thank you very much, Chair, and apologies for my late arrival. I would like to ask, first of all, hugely disappointed about the bus partnership or lack of support or the pause, and you do wonder how long a pause that is going to be. I note, and it's great that phase 1 of South College Street is now complete. I saw that the Scottish water works that we were waiting for have been complete now, and everything is open. I just wondered if there was any data around the use of the cycling infrastructure around phase 1 of South College Street. I haven't seen anything through the council, but I might have missed it if it was on Net Zero. And I guess my question really is around bus partnership funding. Bus partnership funding was used for that project. Is that going to be a risk for phase 2?
Fab, please.
And I'm not aware of any data on the cycling numbers, but it is something that maybe we'll have to have a look at some stage. I know the City Council are looking at usage of the route and doing a completion report on that, but I haven't particularly picked out the cycling numbers, I'm afraid. In terms of BPF funding, you're right in that the funding for phase 1 did come from that fund. In terms of phase 2, at this stage, we're really just looking at the options. We'll have to think that the council and Nestrans, I guess, would have to look at funding options for phase 2 once we've done that design and consultation. I'm not aware that there was any intention to seek BPF funding for that phase 2 works because they don't directly relate to supporting the bus priorities in the city centre in the way that phase 1 did. So I don't think it's a risk, but on the other hand, we haven't yet got a budget head that does determine how we would fund anything that comes through that.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Sandra. Any other questions? No, I'm seeing. Okay, with that, we will move on to item 10. And again, Squats conferences and presentations. And again, that is Rab that is taking us through it.
Thanks, Chair. The conferences and presentations are listed for members' information. Been quite a few recently, but many of them are online, and I think none of them have had financial implications. So they're there for members' information. A couple of presentations are mentioned. I spoke to the Aberdeen Inspired Business meeting about the city centre bus priorities. I've mentioned already Aberdeenshire Full Council, and John did a presentation to the Cycling Delivery Forum on what the priorities were. I think all 7 regional partnerships were asked what their priorities were. So just for information.
Okay, Rab, thank you. And with that, well, I guess we'll move on to the last item today, which is pending business and reports for future meetings. And back to you, Rab.
Thanks, Chair. Item 11, reports for future meetings. We will be hoping to bring back a lot of what's been discussed today, developing the regional active travel network, developing the active travel action plan. Strategic Transport Fund is one that I've said that I will try and bring back. It's been caught up in other things, I'm afraid. And we will report on Aberdeen Rapid Transit as we have future reports to bring forward. So number of items there for future consideration.
Okay, see no hands, no comments. So with that, I guess I thank you, Rab, for that last item in particular. And I think we move to adjourn the meeting. Thank you, everybody, for your attendance today.